Hello, this is Rupinder Syal and welcome to Spartan Tutorials. Today I shall discuss with you a very important biochemical technique that has revolutionized our understanding of biology since the last 30 years. And even after 30 years have passed, this is one of those techniques that is still commonly used in research labs around the world. So it has a lot of longevity. Not many techniques can boast of this accomplishment that they are still used even 30 years after their development. And that technique is called Yeast Two-Hybrid Assay. So let's dive into what it is all about. Now, evidence started to emerge in the 1980s about the importance of protein-protein interactions. Many different enzyme complexes, many different macromolecular assemblies like RNA polymerase, DNA polymerase, replisome, spliceosome. In the 1980s and 90s, they began to be characterized. And it was realized that these are not individual proteins or a few proteins, these are macromolecular complexes with multiple interacting proteins. Here you can see an example of mediator and RNA pol 2 complex, and this is just a small snapshot of what actually happens. As you can see, there are many different subunits coming together. Here is pre-catalytic spliceosome, a big molecular machine inside the cell responsible for RNA splicing, and it is almost as huge as the ribosome. So this is composed of many different RNA and protein molecules. Right. So you can imagine the scale of protein-protein interactions happening in this little baby. And here we have the the god of all structures, ATP synthase, right? Not god, but yeah. So we have the most beautiful structure of ATP synthase, the rotary machine, the motor which makes all the metabolism possible, makes ATP. So as we can see, these protein-protein interactions are crucial to the functioning of these complexes, and it is very important to know which proteins interacted with which other proteins. But during the 1980s, it was really cumbersome and really difficult to do that. First, it was very difficult to clone the interacting proteins, clone the genes responsible for them. And another thing was that it was very difficult to identify interaction deficient alleles. So in 1989, Stanley Fields and Ok-Kyu at State University of New York developed this remarkably easy to use technique which was widely applicable in different model organisms and different systems, and this was called the Yeast Two-Hybrid Assay. Now the assay is really simple to understand. It relies on the modular nature of GAL4 transcription factor. So GAL4 transcription factor is involved in galactose metabolism in yeast. It is a transcriptional activator, and at the N terminus it has a GAL4 DNA binding domain, and at the C terminus it has two activation domains. And during the 80s, studies in Mark Tashny and other labs found out that it is a very modular kind of transcription factor. You can actually separate these activities totally alone so that GAL4 DNA binding domain can function on its own as just a DNA binding domain, and the activation domain can be fused to another protein and it will just activate transcription. So this was the clever approach here. So the idea is that if you have this GAL4 DNA binding domain fused to protein X and activation domain fused to protein Y, and if you can bring those two together. And why would you bring those two together? Because proteins X and Y probably interact. If they bring these activation domains and DNA binding domains together, and they can reconstitute and activate reporter gene, then you got the proof that these two proteins actually interact. And this was the basis of Yeast Two-Hybrid Assay. Here it is shown in a very schematic way. We have the UAS sequence, which is the binding site for GAL4, where DNA binding domain of GAL4 fused to protein X, it binds. Here is the protein Y fused to the GAL4 activation domain, and if they don't interact, as in this case, there is no transcription. So no reporter gene is transcribed. But if they do interact and they can recruit the transcriptional machinery along with RNA pol 2 and other cofactors, they can turn on the transcription. So you have a lot of RNA for reporter gene. It can give a color, it can produce a protein which is involved in metabolism and can be selected as a marker, for example, histidine or tryptophan or uracil. So that was the basic idea. So what you do is you take two vectors, two plasmids, and you transfect them into yeast cells. The X protein, which has the DNA binding domain, it is called the bait protein, and it is cloned in the bait vector. So bait protein in bait vector. Y protein with the activation domain is called the prey protein, and we have the prey vector. Okay. So this is the design of the bait vector, and I would like you to go through this design so that we can understand what each and every component means. Here we have yeast promoter of alcohol dehydrogenase, which drives the expression of this gene. This gene has Gal4 DNA binding domain at the N terminus, T7 RNA polymerase site, and C-MYC regions. This is important for nuclear localization. We have the bait ORF, so the open reading frame of the X gene. Here we have the stop codon, yeast alcohol dehydrogenase transcriptional terminator. So we have the promoter here, corresponding terminator. We have PBR322 ori, which is a bacterial plasmid origin of replication. So this is important if we want to do restriction digestion and cloning in bacteria, because it is much easier to do it in bacteria before moving it to yeast. So we can do that if we use the origin of replication found in bacteria. Here we have kanamycin resistance, so we can use it while we are doing the cloning in bacteria. And then when we move it to yeast, we have the 2 micron origin of replication. 2 micron is the name of a plasmid found in yeast. So this origin of replication is derived from that. And here we have the TRP1 gene. This provides the tryptophan, one of the genes involved in tryptophan metabolism. So the cells are able to grow without tryptophan in the medium. Otherwise, if they don't have the bait vector, they won't be able to grow. So this acts as a negative selection marker. Similarly, we have the prey vector. In the prey vector, we have again yeast ADH promoter, SV40 nuclear localization signal, ATG is just the start codon, Gal4 activation domain, T7 HA tags, these are important for protein purification later on. We have the prey ORF, so this is the Y protein, stop codon, terminator from yeast alcohol dehydrogenase 2 gene, another related gene. Leucine 2, this is the marker, so it will produce leucine, so the cells can be able to grow in absence of leucine. Again, bacterial origin of replication for propagation in bacteria while we are doing the cloning. Ampicillin resistance and 2 micron origin of replication for replicating in yeast. So these are the designs of bait and prey vectors, and we take suitable control, so we also transfect another batch with just the prey vector, just the bait vector, so that there is no background effect. And sometimes if there is a problem in expressing the activation domain or DNA binding domain at the N terminus, we can also fuse it to the C terminus. Okay, so here we have different designs. So Gal4 DNA binding domain, for example, is at the N terminus, and here Gal4 DNA binding domain is at the C terminus of the protein X. Right, so these are the designs of bait and prey vectors. A lot of different varieties and derivatives of these vectors are available. This is just the common canonical example that I have picked for you to show how the system works. So this is the basic idea of Yeast Two-Hybrid assay. Here we have the DNA binding domain. It binds to the binding site. X is the protein which is fused to that DNA binding domain. And here we have the fusion of Y protein and activation domain. By the way, the commonly used DNA binding domains are Gal4, but sometimes LexA DNA binding domain, this is a viral domain, this is also used. Activation domain, as I said, normally Gal4, but sometimes also herpes simplex virus VP16 activation domain is also used. And here is the gene required for growth. So this is the reporter gene. So this can be, for example, His3. So the cells will be able to grow in histidine if the interaction happens. Sometimes reporter gene, for example, LexA, which can give a colorimetric assay. So that is the Yeast Two-Hybrid assay. So we can also develop a reverse two-hybrid assay if we want to screen for interaction deficient alleles. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to look for mutant versions of the X or Y proteins which can't interact. So why is that important? Why would you want to do that? Because we want to look for mutant versions of the proteins which lack the interaction. So that can give us an idea where the interaction actually happens in the protein sequence. So in this case, instead of reporter gene or normal gene required for growth, we actually transcribe a toxic gene. Okay, for example, in case of yeast, a commonly used toxic gene is URA3, which allows the yeast cells to grow in the absence of uracil. But if we provide FOA, which is fluoroauritic acid, it is a nucleotide intermediate, URA3 will act on this and produce a toxic byproduct which will kill the cells. So if the interaction is deficient, this toxic gene will not be transcribed. The cells will be happy to grow. If the interaction is happening, means the interaction is still viable, it's active, then the cells will not be able to grow. So this is the reverse two-hybrid system. And later on, many other scientists published their own derivatives, for example, Yeast One-Hybrid Assay, where instead of X and Y proteins, they just took the DNA binding site and they wanted to look for whether the Y protein binds to that DNA binding site. So instead of the UAS sequence, they used the predicted binding site for that protein. So here there is only one thing, the Y protein bringing along the activation domain as a fusion to the DNA binding site and activating the gene. And if we want to again use it in a reverse manner, so if we want to look at the mutant versions of the DNA binding site or the protein, then we can use a reversed one-hybrid assay where we transcribe a toxic gene. So you can see how the derivatives, they can give us very good complementary information about the same biological process. And here we have the Yeast ThreeHybrid system. ThreeHybrid system was also a pretty interesting derivative where we looked at RNA protein interactions. So here we have X protein, Y protein fused to activation domain, and here we have the DNA binding domain fused to another protein and along with the intermediary RNA. So we are screening for RNA protein interactions. So basically we have covered RNA protein, DNA protein and protein-protein interactions. And lastly, another derivative of Yeast ThreeHybrid system was also developed. This is known as Yeast ThreeHybrid, but it relies on protein-ligand interactions. So here we have this assembly of fruitful ligand protein interactions happening, where we have receptor for ligand A, receptor for ligand B. These two receptors probably come together only if we have this fusion A and B ligand together, and they come together and they form this macromolecular assembly, and along with the usual DNA binding domains and transactivation domains, they will come together and they will transcribe a reporter gene. So you can see how versatile the system was. And another important thing about the applied aspect of this system was how easily applicable it was to clinical studies and to medical research. So in this study, for example, from 1996, the researchers used Yeast Two-Hybrid Assay to uncover interaction deficient alleles of P53. And surprisingly, what they found was that the alleles that they uncovered were very similar to the ones that they had uncovered in actual tumor samples from patients which had mutations in P53. Okay, so this was my discussion of Yeast Two-Hybrid system. To summarize, it's a very powerful technique for screening protein-protein, protein-DNA, protein-RNA and protein-ligand interaction. Very easy to set up and very easy to execute in the lab. Okay, widely applicable. It is applicable to any system, any model organism that you can think of. So hope you like this video. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Do subscribe to my channel for more educational videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. In the meantime, keep reading, keep learning and keep growing. Take care.